As Andy just said, so the session this morning has been from the retailers. Now we're going to talk to the suppliers. So the thorny subject we've got today for our seminar is, do suppliers need the independent retail sector for this seminar session? I'm going to now introduce the panel. So on my left, I've got Owen Watters, Chief Executive of Roberts Radio. And then next to him, we've got Roy Dickens, Sales Director Specialists, Sony UK and Ireland. That's a big business card you've got, isn't it? And then finally, Simon Grantham, Managing Director of Miele GB. Now I'm going to ask all of the guys initially to kind of give us a little bit of background to the kind of where their business is with the independent sector. We've heard a lot about the overall retail picture, but what percentage of indies account for your business? What's your kind of strategy, I guess, at the moment for indies? Maybe start with you, Simon.
Yeah. Okay, so we're a premium family-owned company, and our company started trading with independents over 60 years ago in the UK, and actually if we go back to Germany, that's where the company grew from. So if we look at our business today, around about 60% of our business is split between what we would call freestanding independents, most of, I think, the audience here, and built-in customers.
Yeah.
And we have 200 freestanding independents and about 450 kitchen partners. That part of the business has grown consistently every year. It's managed to adapt to take account of the changes in internet, and we've tried to work with premium retailers in local areas to improve the way that our brand looks with them and deepen that relationship as a result.
Okay. Roy?
Yeah, I think probably most people would know that really the independent base actually built Sony in the UK many years ago. I mean, when Sony first came into the UK, it was really an independent based business. And we grew from that. Obviously, probably about 10 years ago, we went through a pretty horrible time. We lost our way, and now the emphasis for us is back into premium product, and that's where the focus has gone, and we're having pretty successful time not only in consumer electronics but also in imaging, where pretty much we are the fastest growing brand in imaging at this moment in time. So where we are going and where we've been in terms of history and now is the specialist market is actually growing as importance to Sony as a brand.
Okay. Your share is, you've had obviously had Sony centres have decreased, but where do you at the moment, the kind of independent channel makes up what sort of percentage of your business in the UK?
It's about 15% of our business.
I'll see Simon as well. What's indies on your?
About 60 plus, including the kitchen business.
Right. Okay. And Owen, so I'll ask you. You're in a Roberts, proportion of your overall business do indies account for, and how has that changed? Let's say over the last maybe 5 to 10 years.
So we're in our 85th year. So
you're looking good on it.
Thank you. Yeah. We have a well-trodden path with the independent. I guess at the risk of sounding like Theresa May, a bit of a special relationship, but we have approaching 20% of our business is now done through independents.
Yeah.
Sadly, about 10 years ago, I'd say that'd be close to 40%. So we've seen some of the things that have been articulated this morning, some of the pressures, particularly on brown goods. I think we've seen evidence of that in the last 10 years. That said, within the radio sector, we have probably about 68% of the value of the market. So significant and positive on the one hand, but actually the concern is clearly that overall value of the business has declined considerably in the last 10 years.
We've heard retailers being pretty candid about the state of independent retailer in the UK. We've heard Paul Carrington from GfK talk about it. From personal business, looking at your business, what do you see the state of independent retail in the UK? Maybe start with you on that one, Roy. Is it healthy at the moment?
As I say, I think it's quite different. I mean, it depends if we broaden it. If I look at the photo industry in particular, it's actually quite healthy. And I think it's about the relevant. It's not about share with a manufacturer. It's much more about share relevance to consumers. If we're relevant to consumers, then the consumer will shop there, and therefore you become relevant to a brand that's trying to get to that consumer. And then, as I say, in the photo industry, it's almost 50% of our business in the photo industry is going through photo specialists. But that's because they have become very relevant to what is now the enthusiast market, that is the market that's growing. There's more photographers nowadays than there's ever been before, because they're all learning from mobile phones and they want to do more. So that side of it, I think if we now look at what's happening in terms of the big market for most of these guys, which is the TV market, the screen sizes are getting bigger, and as you get bigger in screen sizes, the independents become more relevant again to the consumer, because a bigger proportion of that market goes to independents. So that makes, again, relevance from our point of view very high, because that's where we're going. So, from our point of view, we see it as being quite positive.
Simon, how would you echo Roy's views?
Yep, I think much more positive. And I think that what we've seen, and the guys on the panel earlier this morning talked about how much investment they've put in the business, and we've tried to play our part in that, and I know some of our competitors have done the same. I see that really has got to continue going forward. And actually what's interesting is that if I look back at some of the stats that GfK showed earlier on, throwing some numbers out there, we've seen the numbers of stores through the independents decline, but our turnover grows substantially. So we're doing much more business with fewer partners.
Is that because people are selling more premium brand? People are trading consumers up? How does that work out?
No, I think it's because those retailers that we're predominantly working with have got a really good handle on how to sell premium products, and manufacturers have worked out a good way to support them in doing that. And I think that's where the biggest opportunity is. If I then, if you do the take a town thing, and if I just put our sales per store at Dickens, at John Lewis, and independent, every town, without exception, the independent outsells the multiple. At least for our products, it might be different for others. I can't track the internet business so easily. So actually, your question: do suppliers need independent retailers?
Yeah.
Actually, that's probably the future. Whether the word is independent or whether it's just very strong, switched on local businesses where the future is, I think actually, absolutely.
Okay, maybe that's the subject we're here to talk about. So let's, following off of Simon, so Owen, do suppliers need an independent retail sector?
Without question, yeah. I think, just picking up on Simon's point, which I completely agree with, we've certainly seen, although we've seen the number of retailers decline in the last 5 years particularly, actually the quality of those that are left, I think, has improved enormously. So, but it is still, there is a distinct, almost a game of two halves, in that there are some very proactive dealers, guys we heard from earlier who are investing in their businesses, who are promoting themselves and making themselves very relevant to their customer, to take a cue from Robert. And there are others who, I fear, are just not engaging and are not necessarily accepting that we are in a digital age. Whether you like it or not, you've got to adapt and you've got to embrace change. And there are some independent retailers that simply aren't doing that, and I fear that we won't see those here in 10 years' time. So I do think perhaps we might see further consolidation within the independent channel, but certainly not just from a Robert's perspective, I think from a CE perspective, it's vitally important that the independent channel remains relevant and remains as strong as it can be.
Yeah, Roy?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting what Simon said, which is, when we look at our business now, rather than just looking at a channel, it's much more that we're looking and saying, in these towns, who is going to serve the consumer in those towns? And independent retailing does that in practically every town. So that means absolutely relevant. And when we do go to Currys stores by town, rather than actually focusing on the big beast that is Currys, we actually hold our own in terms of performance by town. And that's what it's about. It's about how much business are we getting locally. And I think that's the key thing, is local independence nowadays, with the challenges that consumers will face with the Internet of Things. Being local, being able to support, being able to be there for them when things... I think this is the time when independent retailing can step forward again. But it's actually worse when it isn't a complicated product, when it is a situation where it's just a box and you just pick the box up and go. But we're not in a box go situation now. We're into a world where products are going to connect with each other. And if you can cross the threshold of the consumer's home, in some ways, that's as important as the store. If you can physically get into a store and start building a relationship with a consumer, you can add on without them ever starting a search for a product through a different route. So I think it's a great opportunity for independent retailing.
The retailers were quite candid earlier, said some of the things they want to change. So the internet was one thing, obviously we'll talk about that, but the kind of point of view, almost an investment and some help with websites as well. They see that they need digital marketing. We all hear the customer journey, omni-channel, we've talked about that countless times. But where do you see the role for manufacturers playing a part in helping retailers to get their digital, on their online offering up to scratch? If they're going to adapt their businesses, they need to be able to do that as well, don't they?
I think there's a few things. I think one of the things I've perhaps reminded of this morning actually, is that we need to probably upgrade the quality of our sales people. That they're much more become business advisors who have a very good understanding of the digital world, how to put a marketing plan together with their local business partners. And it becomes much less of a transactional relationship, and it's much more of a how do we build business together type of relationship, and understanding, the technical parts of the digital world, which quite frankly our guys don't now. And so I actually see that's an important part, because still the sales guy working with our local independent partners is the key relationship that we've got. And they've got to represent that and take back, everything that comes back from that partner. So I think we can do that. We can, of course, do lots of other things, provide content and remind people there are easy ways to develop that content. We can do much more of that. But I think going back on something that was said earlier about personalisation,
Robert said that, yeah.
I think we can get much smarter at developing relevant content for local markets. And if I take markets like cooking, which is exciting, there's tons of great content. We can make that personal. We can link food retailers, food bloggers with local people selling built-in products. And that's the way the customer probably wants to work. We're certainly doing this in some markets now as a trial, and I think we can just kind of develop that much more.
Yeah, maybe Roy, where do you...
Yeah, I think rich content is the order of the day at the moment. It's providing much more information, whether that be videos, of a product, of it being unboxed, and someone explaining how it operates and what the benefits of it are. I think the only concern in some ways is that could just become very generic and very impersonal. And the one thing about independent retailers is about a personal relationship. So in some ways, it's probably, again, working with you guys to make sure that you have the ability to maybe produce your own videos with your own staff, so that there's a relationship aspect between the consumer and the store before they ever start. But in terms of from what we're doing, I mean, I have a retail marketing manager who works for me, Carly, and she's been asking independent retailers what they actually want. And some of the things that we've got, we currently do something called MailChimp, which is information that actually can just be sent directly to your databases with good content on it and calls to action and everything else. And that's been taken up really well. So it's not just website, it's communication with your customer, whether it be through internet or whether it through mail or social or whatever aspect. It's about staying in touch with your customer and making sure they remember you're there.
With you, Owen, as well. I know you've invested money in the brand new Robert's website as well. So where do you see the opportunity for you to work closer with independent retailers, or then to on digital marketing and creating that kind of customer journey and that omni-channel approach, really?
I think Robert hit the nail on the head earlier when he talked about, at the heart of any business now, there needs to be a digital strategy. Yeah. And we've certainly recognised that in the last 12 months. And as you say, we've just launched a new website, and actually digital marketing is now at the forefront of everything we do. We're shaping our business to try and reflect that as well. And I do think that independent retail needs to essentially do the same sort of thing. I completely agree. I think rich content is fundamentally is one thing that manufacturers can easily provide. I do share echo the fear of, well, you need to try and avoid it becoming vanilla or very kind of standard, if you will. And again, bear in mind what we've spoken about this morning is how the independent remains relevant and creates a standout appearance. There's no question that independents have to have a presence online. Yeah. But it's a question of how do you personalise, how do you make it different? And as soon as you start just streaming the same content from all the manufacturers, you're not different. So by definition, I would encourage independent retailers themselves to also invest in how do you make yourself localised? How do you localise yourself, but on a global scale, or a national scale, I should say. Yeah. So shout about what makes you special. Why should people come to you, and how can you add value to that? To that consumer journey. Yes, brands can play a part in that, and I think we can provide some of the collateral. But I think look at all the big manufacturers. They spend a fortune, and it's by no accident that they spend a fortune on their digital footprint. And I think real world is that independent retail absolutely needs to do the same. Yeah, we heard this morning some of the criticism of manufacturers, but it'd be unfair not to ask you guys what you want retailers to do. The manufacturers have said they want more support from you guys on certain areas. We've just talked about that, digital marketing and investment, and trading seems to be a very important thing, and that's obviously going well at the moment from what we've heard. But what are the stumbling blocks for you as brands, manufacturers wanting to work with independents? What would you like independents to do to change to help fit more with to be more relevant with your brands? Maybe Simon, start you on that one.
I think some of the things were said this morning. Secondly, I think it's a very competitive market, and I think Retailers have probably got to make a clear choice about what brands to support and what not to support. And that's always difficult, and it's not our job to say that. They've got to work out how that fits into the proposition. But, I'm not sure it works selling 15 brands of washing machines.
No.
Maybe 4. I think that's one thing I would say definitely works. And I think the second thing is not to be afraid to invest in trading the value of the sale up. And I think that everybody said the same thing, that shop footfall is declining, but that actually, when you turn that round, means that the value of that sale is even more important. So it's kind of a relationship between us and the independent to try and maximise the value of that sale. And we've got to be much closer to understanding the barriers to losing that sale from our independent partners. And I think equally, the independents got to be much more up for trading up and trying really, really hard to get that added value sale.
Roy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, if I'm really being honest, I think that...
Be honest, please, yeah.
I think the guys are actually doing a bloody good job of trying to navigate, and there's not a huge amount more that they can actually do. I do think, though, when we're talking about things like connected home, and when we're talking about things like retail training, I really would like a standard that maybe we can invest in. Maybe it's a case of saying, can we contribute towards the infrastructure that actually will put that in place? Because I think individually, if we all go off and try and do it manufacturer by manufacturer, it will be a complete mess. But if people want to get into connected home, and I don't know whether it's through Retro or Cedia or whatever, then maybe it is a case of saying we need a contribution from manufacturers. That is about being relevant to consumers and saying this is what our value add is going to be to consumers. Therefore, please can you invest in supporting our value add? Completely and utterly get that. And that's what I think what I'd like to see back is something that enables us to invest on something that's going to underpin independent retailing. If it is things like how do they develop their own personality online, and there's a web company that's trying to support them, again, maybe through Retro. Sorry, Howard, I know I keep pointing everything at you, but I do think there needs to be somebody that actually is underpinning trying to support, because none of these guys have got technical experts in all of these fields to actually try and do it. So it has to come together and provide some kind of support. And I think if we can do that, then I think we can put pressure on, and we should put pressure on ourselves to invest in that and create that, because it will be a value add to consumers, which is ultimately who we're trying to serve.
Oh, no, we talked about the connected home. Obviously, Roberts has moved some of its product areas, traditional radio brand, but you've gone into smart audio in the last 18 months, maybe, and taking steps into the connected home. Do you get frustrated when you kind of see some retailers who won't embrace the kind of new technology? How do you help retailers kind of move forward into the connected world, and how do they work with you on that? What's the partnership going to be?
I think it's about education principally.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big barriers is that people make assumptions or presumptions on certain technologies or certain categories. We've heard a lot this morning about the challenges around trying to make a margin selling TV, for example, and I guess what I would encourage is retailers, particularly independent retailers, to think a bit more laterally and to think about, actually, did you know by diversifying, if you consider smart radio, smart audio, you can actually make more cash margin very often selling a smart radio than you can selling a 42-inch TV, which is crazy, but that's the reality of where we are. So I think what I would suggest is more, this convergence I think is quite exciting for lots of different sectors, radio included, and I do think that all of a sudden it's not just about, once you cross that threshold into a consumer's home, all of a sudden it's not just the TV that you've sold, and okay, you may not have made your money there, but the point I think that was made several times is it's the next sale and the next sale, and how do you actually get a variety of different solutions into the consumer's home. And that's where the independent fundamentally has an advantage over any national retailer. You guys can do that better than anybody else, and that's the core competence that we have in this room, and this is something that we just absolutely must be focusing on.
Yeah. We'd earlier as well, there's this fear, we've heard it all before about, retailers simply becoming showrooms for manufacturers. And obviously you want your product to be shown off to the best possible advantage. You've got some great products in a decent store environment. I guess, what challenges are you facing? How do you speak to retailers to get that across and ensure that the customer journey that Robert talked about is how are retailers remaining relevant to your brands as well?
I think again, you've got to pick the right ranges for the right store, the profile, the customer footfall, etc. Just to make sure that you're not just ticking a box on the display agreement.
Yeah.
Because I think that's old thinking. Just saying I've got to have 12 appliances and therefore you tick the discount box. If you can't sell a product category but sell twice as much of something else, then that's smart. I think that our job is also to work with our partners to remind them of the growing sectors, because often what we've got is more market data, maybe more forward-looking than our local partners have got. So I think our job is to excite them about those opportunities. Some were talked about GFK earlier on.
Yeah.
And then try and do a good job to be at the forefront of a new idea, new technology, to basically make more margin.
Yeah. Roy?
Yeah, I think the key thing as well for us is we still have account managers going around and their area business managers, and they understand these businesses at a deep level, because the profiles of consumers that they have sometimes are slightly different. Therefore, it does matter what ranges and what proposition we actually put in front of those consumers as well. So I'm pretty positive that actually the way forward is looking clear.
Yeah. Are you positive as Roy is?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a healthy reality check from a manufacturer's perspective that any product that goes onto a shelf has got to earn its right to be there.
Yeah.
It isn't, and Simon's point, it's not just about essentially having a range of 10, 12 products, whatever. It's about making sure that that the churn for that particular product is right, both in commercial terms, but also that it's supporting other messages that you have, and that whole convergence piece again, I think, comes into play. So I am positive. I think the independent channel, I do think actually it's quite an exciting time, and I know I asked a question from the floor earlier about price increases and so on, but I do think that this is a moment in time opportunity to stabilise and perhaps think again about how we try and retain some value in certain sectors.
Yeah. Okay, and maybe we'll ask Robert, for the future of his business and also other independents, where they see it going. How do you see the future of independents? Robert talked about Brexit. Okay, it hasn't happened yet, but we're going to be moving into a post-Brexit world. How do you see the independent electrical sector shaping up in the next sort of 5 years? Simon?
Well, I mean, I think I've tried to say I'm actually very positive about the way I see the future. I think there are some other positive economic dimensions that maybe we haven't mentioned. There's still a huge shortage of homes. So there'll be, and you can see it in some towns now, massive expansion of homes. That just means more appliances at some point. That's nothing but good news. I think the one of the flip sides of the large multiple retailers wanting to become bigger is actually they're much less good at being specialised, and that really does open up a big opportunity for people in certain retailers in certain areas to be absolutely brilliant specialists. And some of the markets were mentioned. Robert talked about some of them. I can think of multiple retailers. I'll just throw one out there. If I take coffee makers.
Okay.
Premium coffee makers, there's one retailer has half the market and they do a rubbish job. And honestly, there's an open goal to take a market like that seriously. That's one example, and I'm convinced there are lots of others.
Wake up and smell the coffee, quite literally.
Yeah. I gave you that one.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here all week. I'm not actually. I'm going about 5. Where do you see it going, Roy? You've got almost.
I think really it's going to come down to individuals. I think whether the independent market size grows or shrinks, I think there will still be independents that will get out of the market. I think one of the things we've always had over a number of years is an ageing population, and the sons following it and everything else. So I think there's to be some natural. But it should come down to each individual town, each individual independent retailers, and I think that you will redefine yourself. And I do think that the market is starting to move back towards you, as I say, because I think that the challenges that consumers will have in the Internet of Things and connected home and everything else will mean I want someone local who can come and help me. And I think that's the strongest opportunity. What that then means is I don't know at this moment in time what that means to us as manufacturers, how we have to adapt ourselves to support and work in that. And that's what I'd love to be trying to get to, because then that allows me to go back to the business and get the right levels of investment, get the right levels of resource, make sure the product proposition. I mean, we've still got products from our point of view that are what we call SDS selected distribution, which is keeping those premium products out of non-premium chains, and that's that's got to become a sustainable proposition from our point of view, and we come under immense pressure, but there's no intention to change that, and we can see it working in the photographic world, so I hope that it continues to work in consumer electronics as we move forward.
Is that your sort of similar view from the Roberts point of view, Owen, or where do you see it shaping up?
Well, I think as I mentioned earlier, I
Yeah.
think the calibre of independents that are retailing today, I think, has definitely risen. I echo Roy's comments. You know, we have seen some casualties in the last few years, and no doubt, sadly, we'll see some more. But I think those that are left, I think, are the more proactive, generally the more proactive dealers, the people that actually see the value of investing in their business. And people in stores, I think, are absolutely the most prized asset that independent retail has, certainly. So, look, I think it's still going to be tough. Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
I think, as we heard earlier, the market's not where we want it to be, but I think there's still business to be done, and I think the independent has a great opportunity to really press home its advantage in the coming months and years, I guess.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're going to have time for a few questions. I don't want to hold up the buffet lunch, or the sandwiches may have gone from the conference before. There might be not many left. But I was going to open the questions up to the floor. Really, Andy's got the microphone, so anyone who's got a question, say where you're from and what your name is.
Hi, my name is Angela Murphy. I'm from Electrical Safety First. There were just a couple of things I wanted to highlight in that very interesting discussion. In relation to the smart home, increasing complexity in a system always increases fragility. So the idea of having specialists in the independent retailer section who can deal with that and inform the customers and possibly even train them how to use it properly is, I think, something that would be extremely useful and has been touched on earlier. The second point I wanted to raise a flag with is that omni-channel rather than just digital, please. It is an ageing population. There is a proportion of people that don't have access to online or don't like using it, and having worked in the communication business for well over 20 years, omni is the way to go. It's a layering effect when it comes to communications. And finally, the other point I wanted to make was in relation to the independent retailer establishing relations, community relations with their area. Don't forget local radio stations and local papers. You know, there's a relationship there that can be exploited, that can really sort of link into your customers. So that was all I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks. The local, so it's sort of about special, especially going back to what Rob was saying as well.
Yeah, completely agree.
And not everyone, is using the internet. God forbid, some retailers aren't using the internet, but. Okay, any more questions? Any more questions on the floor? Paul, Giles?
Hi. You're explaining about, using the internet for all sorts of channels and how we've got to get individual content, which we all understand. But I think the pressure that's on us is we are, like the lady just said, supporting newspapers still a little because some of our clientele read newspapers, we're supporting radio, we're supporting internet, and all those social channels. And we've still got the shop floor to support. So we are giving you absolutely everything. Do you think you should be examining your model as to whether you are giving us enough to be able to continue to fund all that?
You want to say that one, Simon?
No, absolutely. I think the answer to that is definitely.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic market that we're moving in. The consumer's got more information than ever before. I absolutely agree. And I think I mentioned earlier about the type of sales people that we're hiring and training. And I think that they need to be much sharper at understanding and supporting our partners around digital expertise and not just passing that on to somebody in our head office to do. So absolutely agree.
Roy, Owen, want to comment on that?
Yeah, I agree, but what I would also add is that I think manufacturers need to recognise the independent channel for what it is, which is a huge opportunity for them both commercially and also in terms of their brand presences as well. I think what frustrates me a little is you see some brands that will dip their toe into the independent channel, recognise actually this is hard work, it's expensive, and then they bugger off and do something else.
Yeah.
I think stay the course. And your point, we absolutely appreciate the fact that this is an omni-channel proposition, that you've got investments at all level of the value chain, and I think manufacturers absolutely should stump up and try and help that point of differentiation that we talked about, and also invest in perhaps platforms or templates, if you will, that you guys can then personalise. So yeah, I completely agree.
Roy, final point on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think from our point of view, we have to try and provide as much as we can as support from a platform point of view to optimise that investment, whichever. I think what you may be alluding to is can we have more marketing money because we need to actually do we need to do a broader, more difficult job.
I think that the sort of misunderstanding is that we don't spend that wisely, but the businesses you're dealing with now want to spend that wisely.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to waste it. We don't want to wait for the end of the year and then blow all our budget on one advert. We actually want to use it during the year usefully. So, you know, providing we're doing that, I think, you know, we need your guys' support.
Yeah, and I think Simon's right. I think maybe we need to train the people that call on you to actually work closer, because they're probably just as traditional in only using certain methods, and they need to understand some of the methods that can be used that are more cost effective and also give you further reach.
I think we've got time for one more question, and then we'll break for lunch. If that's okay with everyone.
We have some marketing money too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got that message.
Yeah, hi there, Morgan Edwards. Can you explain how manufacturers dealing direct online with the customer benefits us? You know, where's the benefit to independent electrical retailers for manufacturers trying to deal direct online with the end user? That's the first one. And as part of that, whilst I do appreciate the support we get from manufacturers, it sometimes feels like you're pulling the rug away from under our feet.
Who wants to comment on that? Owen?
I think there's a distinction to be drawn between competing online and going direct. I think there are two different propositions completely. I completely agree that if you're finding that you're unable to trade profitably because a manufacturer is directly undercutting you, I think that's unacceptable, full stop. But I do think actually there is a place for retail to be out there, as much from a brand building perspective as much as anything else. Creating that equity, hopefully, indirectly will drive footfall into your stores, will drive awareness about our products, our solutions, how they might dovetail into some other solutions as well. So I do think that that's a valid, I think it's a valid platform. I think there's also a reality check here that there are some consumers, whether we like it or not, that will want to engage directly with the manufacturer. And providing they're doing that and the playing field is level, then I think that's acceptable.
Any final comments from Roy, Simon?
Well, I've actually been there in terms of Sony's right, but again, it was as Owen's saying, the benchmark was that we were at full ERP, and in some ways I'm not sure whether it was good or bad, because actually consumers sometimes felt that the product was expensive. But at the same time, it actually gave a benchmark for retailers to actually say, this is what the manufacturer is saying the recommended retail price is, and look, there it is, it's being retailed at that. The other thing for me at that point, and we stopped mainly because it was just not cost effective to actually run a retail, so we understand the costs associated with trying to run an online platform. But it was more the fact that there was nowhere where our total proposition could be seen in one place. You know, could be bought in one place. You know, and it can be anything from camcorder batteries to, you know, accessories. All of those things were things that people just weren't bothering to invest in. So, how do you give the consumer access to them? You know, you end up giving that business pretty much to Amazon and saying, here you go, Amazon, you're the only people that can put everything on a site and sell it all. So it was a service job to the consumer rather than it was a competing position with any retailer.
Final point from you on that side?
Yeah, well, maybe to the second point of Morgan's question, which was pulling the rug under the feet, and I can only speak for our business. We've tried quite carefully to have a direct-to-the-consumer plan, if you like, as part of all the other parts of our business. So I mentioned earlier on that we've got 200 electrical retailers. You know, that fits the plan. If we had 1,000, it probably wouldn't make sense to be selling direct. But it works because there's, as Owen said, there's a customer who wants to work with a manufacturer and buy at the recommended retail price. Plus, they might live in a location where there are no stores. And by offering a delivery service, it gives that consumer that opportunity.
Brilliant, thanks. That's okay. Thank you, panellists. So, big thanks to Simon Grantham from Miele, and Roy Dickens from Sony, and Owen Watters from Roberts Radio. Thanks.